I'd say the legacy, first of all, is that these guys changed the game. These guys changed the game. The game you watch now is the game that they created. The speed of the game, the fast-paced freelance nature of the game, of course, the three-point shot, of course, the high-flying athleticism that the slam dunk contest is emblematic of. They changed the game.
Welcome to Wait What? Sports Biz Chat with DP and McGee, the podcast where we take a sometimes irreverent, sometimes cynical, and yes, even a sometimes serious look at the business of sports. I'm your co-host, Tim McGee.
And I'm David Parro.
David, what's on your mind this rainy, gloomy Tuesday morning in the New York metropolitan area?
Well, it's above freezing, so we have that going for us because that's been a rare situation lately. I'm just so tired of it. First off, I don't like saying, I can't take credit for it, although he seemed to say that we delivered some extra luck for him. Last week's guest, Jake 𝗨𝗏𝗏, a longtime friend of both of ours. I'm just so excited for what's happening at 23XI. First ever start the season with 3 wins by Tyler Reddick, one of the drivers on Michael Jordan and Denny Hamlin's team. And that, this whole operation coming off of what they did last year, I just think it's been spectacular of how they've come together. And one of the things I want to say, obviously, congratulations to Jake and the leadership that he's brought. I've been critical of Michael Jordan in the past on various things, but the way he's handled everything with this team, I think, has been amazing. When he gets interviewed, he puts all the credit to everybody else, not just Tyler Reddick, but crew chief and Denny for bringing him the idea, which of course Steve talked about last week in our conversation. And Michael's like, I'm the guy that puts the money up, and he's having fun with it. And just the conversation we had with Jake was just so refreshing in terms of that feeling that they're having inside it. And I think it's a positive for the sport. Now, I don't think Tyler Reddick's going to necessarily dominate. By the way, he had SVG breathing down his neck there towards the end of that race.
I was thinking about you when he was making his move. But if you did watch the race, Tyler Reddick was going much faster at the end of his run than SVG was at the end of his, and he pulled away at the end. It wasn't particularly close.
They got that car dialed in. And I do remember back, I'm not saying Tyler Reddick is Jeff Gordon. We're not there yet. But there was a time when Jeff Gordon was very, dominant, and people were saying, what's he doing? What do they have on the the car? Are they doing anything that's untoward to the rules, because he was so dialed in? And the then president of NASCAR, Brian France, who, kind of had some issues and was moved out, I remember saying to me once, he goes, fans like seeing extraordinary people do extraordinary things. And so while, yes, you could say, no, we want more balance, people start watching when things like this happen. So I don't know what's going to happen next race, but, won 3 different types of race: super speedway in Daytona, a more traditional, I think, 1.5-mile oval at Atlanta, and then this road course at COTA. I do have to say this: I do not like seeing stock cars race at COTA. I think that race is quite honestly pretty boring. And I'm an F1 guy somewhat, but I don't think those cars look anywhere as cool as the F1 cars on that particular circuit.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you like some pate to go with that?
And I'm not. I like NASCAR as well. It's just that, and I'm not necessarily against road courses, but
I love the fact that you have to win on different types of courses.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Listen, Bubba hasn't hit his stride, but he finished in the top 10. This team is going to be very good. Whether or not they dominate for the entire season is unlikely, just because it's a long season and there's a lot of great teams and drivers out there. Do keep in mind that a couple of years ago, 23XI was so bullish on Tyler Reddick that they bought him out of his contract a year early from RCR. So they saw something then, which is certainly paying dividends now.
But that's somewhat my point, that they have put together one hell of a race operation. And as Jake said last week, winning is really hard in this sport. It's not something that you can expect. Yes, you can go into the race feeling you have a chance to win, but they've put together things that have been able to deliver winners. And part of that is driver, part of that is crew chief, part of that is crew, and certainly kind of the leadership and the mentality, which I think Michael and Denny are bringing. But, there were a number of people involved in putting this together, and I think it's just clicked really nicely. And the reason why we can sit there and talk about this as fans and friends, but what's important is I think the eyeballs and the momentum that this creates with NASCAR, particularly coming out of the lawsuit settlement in December. So I think it's a fascinating moment for NASCAR, I think, moving forward, and it's certainly got my attention.
Yeah, 2311 couldn't have scripted it any better when it comes to, coming out of that lawsuit. I'm reminded of something, he didn't say it on the show, but, past guest Jeff Burton, I heard him once say, every race 40 guys start and 39 realize they're not going to win. Some of them just realize it sooner than others. And it's the same thing with the season, right? It's a long season, Only one person, only one driver is going to prevail at the end. Now, whether or not that's Tyler Reddick, I'm certainly not willing to go out on a limb and make a prediction now. But the nice thing is that had this been last year with the playoffs, after 3 races, he'd be the only driver who was locked into a playoff spot.
Yeah.
It's one way to improve your chances, right? Just win every race when nobody else can qualify.
Right. Before I go back over to you, there is another follow-up bit that I wanted to talk about, and it's coming out off of the Olympics and a bit of the, I guess, controversy that we discussed last week with the gold medals going both to the women's and the men's U.S. teams, and some of the problems that happened in the locker room and things that were said, and the women not going, say, to State of the Union. SNL did a really brilliant thing, and I was so happy that the athletes participated in that. And interestingly, the guest this week was an actor by the name of Connor Story, who happens to play the Russian player in Heated Rivalry. By the way, I did not know that he was an American.
Yeah.
He does a really good job, I think, as the Russian player in that series. But Jack and Quinn Hughes, Jack being the one who had the golden goal in overtime against Canada, and were joined on stage with Connor Story by Hillary Knight and Megan Keller. Megan, who scored the overtime goal for the women's game, and Hillary Knight, the captain of the team, the all-time leading scorer in women's hockey, came together, and I just thought it was a great moment. And, I think that the Quinn brothers, particularly Jack, because so much focus was on him, probably had to deal with questions more than he should have, because in his post-game interview, he said what was on his mind about, this is for the U.S. and proud to be a USA hockey member and to play with this team, and this is a brotherhood. I didn't think there was anything wrong with what he said. And he got obviously all the follow-ups about was it appropriate, and everybody was laughing at the joke that the president said when he was on FaceTime with the FBI director and the team in the locker room after. From everything I've seen, that family has never necessarily been anything but supportive of women's hockey. Not saying anything about the appropriateness or lack of appropriateness, I should say, of what happened. Just saying I thought this was a good moment. It was nice to see them come together, and it was really brilliant on an SNL part and Lorne Michaels' part to pull that off the way they did.
Lorne Michaels, the Canadian.
Yeah.
When somebody, especially an Olympian who wins a medal, professes their love for their country, the fact that they love representing the USA in the Olympics, my mind does not go to, that person supports the current administration or opposes the current administration. My mind goes to this person, to your point, speaking from the heart. And yeah, I thought that opening monologue was great with those two women there. The women got a joke in at the men's expense. I think we should move, as a nation, we should move on from that and just be happy that we won 2 gold medals in a sport that we've not always dominated. And I'm not saying we dominated, but we won 2 gold. I want to talk a little bit about FIFA, a follow-up from something we talked about last week, and then some other stuff that's going on, which, I think I mentioned last week. Every time there's an Olympic Games, there's some sort of issue or crisis or problem, and the IOC always seems to solve it, right? And the games, by and large, come off without a hitch. Well, we're starting to hear rumblings about things going on with FIFA. So we talked last week about the fact that the New York, New Jersey organizing committee canceled the big fan festival that was scheduled for Liberty State Park, and they said they were going to run a series of more community-based events throughout the state. It turns out the Seattle organizing committee did the same thing. They made that announcement. Now they're going to be having fan festivals across the state of Washington, from, Yakima in the east to Vancouver in the northwest and everywhere in between. They can spin it all they want, but it's really come down to a financial situation. I think it was a couple of $1 million a day just to run that fan festival in each market, which, if you're not making enough sponsorship dollars, you've got to cut costs other places, and that's in some places, and that's as good a place as any to cut it. But there's some other stuff that's going on. The Foxborough City Council, so the Boston Organizing Committee, is actually playing their matches in Foxborough at Gillette Stadium. Foxborough is a very small community. I think it's 19,000 residents. So it doesn't have a huge tax base. And so the city council will not vote to approve the license to hold those matches until the promised funds to pay for security and first responders and things like that has been released and paid to the city of Foxborough. And so I think you got to watch out for this, because there's a lot of money that was allocated across all of the markets that has not been released yet. Now, the Department of Homeland Security, which is running this, is saying, well, it's because of the government shutdown. But this money was supposed to have been distributed by the end of January, which was before the current shutdown. So somebody's not being entirely truthful. But that's going to cause issues, right? Because there's, Kansas City, any market, LA, they can't afford to absorb all of these costs in their budgets. They just can't. So I'm really watching out for that.
Yeah, I don't understand the reason being given for why they haven't been distributed. It was part of the One Big Beautiful Bill, right?
Yeah, the money's been allocated.
Money's been allocated, and I don't understand. I mean, you and I, I think we're pretty good on our civics. We understand the way that things work, generally speaking. But even something that was so backed by the executive branch, meaning.
You mean the FIFA Peace Prize recipient, first ever?
That was very heavily backed by the executive branch. And the pushing of the One Big Beautiful Bill that, these are one of these giant, it literally is called One Big Beautiful Bill. And they make sure that we know that all the time, that it was so loaded with different things, and no one's ever going to get all the way through that. But this funding, my understanding was through that, something that they supported. So I don't know if it's being withheld to, like other things we're hearing, the new tunnel between New Jersey, the Gateway Project in New York, things held up for various other silly reasons. I haven't heard what those reasons are in this case. We can speculate based on other things that we've seen, but
hopefully the blood will have dried from me biting my tongue before we post the videos from this. I would say we know more than people in certain senior roles in the government about civics. But anyway, The Athletic has just come out with an article. So Infantino has said that every match has been sold out, right? Overwhelming demand for these tickets. Every one of the 104 matches to be played are sold out. But now FIFA is sending out emails to people in their database saying, oh, we've got tickets for 64 matches, but you better hurry up because there's very few and they're going to go fast. So these high ticket prices, this uncertainty of certain things is starting to impact ticket sales.
Yeah, it's too bad. There's obviously some of these stories are putting a bit of a negative veil over, all this excitement that I think anyone, not just a global football fan, but any sports fan here in the States, to have this unbelievable event come to the U.S. and of course Canada and Mexico as well. We predicted that there may be some concerns whether it's protests, but now when I made the prediction about what the protests would be about, there may be other reasons that people are protesting. I mean, can't keep up.
Yeah, we'll have to keep watching it. What else?
I want to talk about the winning by Paramount Skydance, which I guess is the official name now, of the Warner Brothers Discovery, which Netflix was going to take a portion of that. It had been not agreed to because it had all kinds of regulatory approvals to go through, but that they wanted a big piece of that. It looked like it was going to be done. And then after Skydance won, getting CBS and Paramount, the Ellisons said, we want this too, which includes, of course, HBO and all of Warner Brothers Studio and CNN, which is an interesting piece. And they wanted to buy everything. They had a little more of an offer, but it seemed like Warner Brothers Discovery said, no, we're happy with the deal with Netflix. And then it just became untenable. The bid got higher. Netflix, they backed out. And that's very, very recent news that they're backing out. So assuming it will get approval, and I think we can guess that it will get approval given what we're seeing right now, there will be a merger of everything Paramount and everything HBO, Warner Brothers, et cetera, which includes TNT and all these things. So the combining of these assets will make us, as people that follow sports and watch sports, realign our entire sports viewing category or vocabulary to where we're going to get something. Understanding is they want to keep the HBO brand alive. Maybe Paramount and Paramount Plus changes. We don't know. But this is all pretty fascinating. There will be a lot of major sports in the hands of this giant conglomerate.
Most personally, because it's always got to be about me, right?
Of course.
You know, CBS and Turner share the rights to the NCAA men's basketball tournament. So that's obviously going to have implications, and which whether or not the NCAA can get out of the deal in some sort of corporate action like this and then open it up, I don't know. We'll have to see. But we're talking about billions of dollars in rights fees over the course of the agreement. What do you say? Take a break?
Yeah, very excited about the guests we have coming up.
It's time for our guest.
I think it's safe to say that both Tim and I have a vast appreciation for the creative storytelling side of sports. So it's always fun to welcome storytellers to the show. A 2-time Emmy Award winner, Kenan Kamwana Holley is an executive producer and the director of Prime Video's 4-part docuseries, 𝗀𝘆𝗹𝗲𝗏, the legend of the American Basketball Association. A 4-year football letterman at Duke, Kenan began his filmmaking career at NFL Films, a revolutionary force in sports storytelling. The first African-American man hired at the company, Kenan was able to flourish under the tutelage of the legendary 𝗨𝘃. He went on to stints producing important documentaries at NASCAR Productions and ESPN. Kenan holds credits on some of my favorite 30 for 30 features, including I Hate Christian Laettner. And he directed a redemption song, a Spike Lee Lil Joints documentary about the 1974 Howard men's soccer team. Kenan is also the founder of Athlete to Artist, a mentorship organization that helps former athletes use principles learned on the playing field to transition into careers in production. Kenan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it. Good to be here, Tim. Good to see you guys.
I have to tell you before we start, because you, first of all, you are the second Duke football alum to be on the show.
What?
We had Keith Gill on the show.
Okay.
Previously, and I also need to say that I'm a Wake Forest grad.
Okay.
So there's that. And Tim, while he went to Cornell, for some reason, is a Carolina fan.
Oh my God, Tim.
So we like to cover those things off before with our guests.
Yeah, thank you. Let me know what I'm dealing with here. Let me know what I'm dealing with.
Well, listen, we Tim and I have had the chance to both see it, and we're both huge fans of what you've put together, Kenan. We're looking forward to chatting with you about that tonight, today and your career. But we want to start at a pretty high level. So as you took on this project, what did you go into it with as far as your overall objective?
The overall objective when we went in was to get it made. I think you guys understand how difficult it is these days to get a documentary made for a big streamer like Netflix, Apple, and ultimately Amazon. And so our whole goal was to get it made. We felt that just the emotional side of it was that Coach George Karl was intimately involved with being the spark to this idea. He was the one who brought it forward and got Dr. J's first involvement via a podcast. That's how it started. I heard a podcast with the two of them together that my friend Brett Goldberg sent me, who also went to Duke with me. And we had a TV show years ago at Duke that when we were kids, teenagers running around Duke's campus doing a sports TV show. And so our ultimate goal was to get it made, because the guys of the ABA, once I understood their story, were vastly undervalued. And so we took it on with a third partner, Todd Lieberman in Hidden Pictures, a really accomplished producer in the Hollywood scripted arena. And we took it on with him with the intent, we have to get this made. We got to get it sold. And so that was our whole mentality. It's like, what do we do to display the spectacular and soulful nature of this story to get it made? And we knew we had to balance those two things, the spectacular with the soulful, in order to have it be appealing enough for someone to say, yes, we're willing to go in with you guys on this.
I am old enough to remember the ABA. I was a fan of the New York Nets growing up in the shadow of Nassau Coliseum, but there was so much I didn't know about the league and its players and its story. What was the biggest surprise for you and your team about the league that you discovered while you were researching and making this documentary?
I think the biggest surprise came about midway through the development process when talking with some of the former ABA players, and they informed us that they had actually played games against the NBA. And I thought they meant, when they said we played against the NBA, I thought they meant, I was like Tim and David, I thought they meant summer league. We were on 2 summer league, sponsor teams, and we played against some of their players. Like, no. We fully, as the Kentucky Colonels, went and played the New York Knicks. And I was like, what? It's like, yeah, the Indiana Pacers of the ABA went and played the Los Angeles Lakers. I'm like, wait a minute. And I had to look it up. Like, wait a minute, let me see, did this happen? And I looked it up, and they played, but they didn't just play them, they beat them, that they won. That towards the end of the ABA's existence, they were winning the majority of those games. So when I saw that is validated. When it's like when you do what we do and you hear people telling old sports stories, they get out of proportion. You know that. We all do that. When I tell my stories of me at Duke, I'm way better as a player than I actually was on the field. But with these guys, when you see their accomplishments, it's one of those things where it was totally validated when we saw that they had won and had defeated the NBA in these exhibition games.
So, Kenan, even though the ABA, I think on most levels, was considered a little more progressive, certainly than the NBA, and that includes from ownership, the marketing of the game, the style of play, of course, you encountered, it seemed through the documentary, pretty serious issues of racism across that level. Was that a surprise to you, given all that you did know about the ABA?
No, I think it was America. It's America in 1967. What do you expect? It's like, it wasn't surprising. It was just very humbling to find out the personal stories of the men who experienced this. I think when you see Spencer Haywood's story, you see the personal nature of, because I think when it comes to like our country and like racism, the general umbrella of it is kind of like, it's one thing, but when it becomes personal and you hear it involve and affect someone's life, it changed your perspective on it. And so I expected it because I knew it's America, it's 1967. But when Spencer Haywood told the story of his negotiations with the owner of the Denver Rockets, they were called at the time, the owner of the Denver team, and you hear that story in episode 2 of him talking about how he was disrespected, belittled, he and his attorney, he and his agent, and you start to understand that there's personal ramifications for what's happening in the country. And I think that we all say, all of us who are students of history, we all say 1967 America. As soon as you say that, we expect some element of racism to be present. But when you hear it in a basketball player who's so outstanding as Spencer Haywood, his numbers are like, it's hard to compare. His numbers as a rookie are like akin to like a rookie. They're better than a rookie LeBron. I love LeBron, but they're way better than a rookie LeBron, or even like Dwight Howard as far as the imposing nature of him in the paint. As a rookie, it's mind-blowing. So you would think, because we think of athletics as we do now in the modern age, that makes you valuable. If you're that young and that good, you are one of the most valuable commodities in any sports league and franchise, because you're going to be good for a long time. So of course you're going to be respected. Of course you're going to be honored. Of course you're going to be paid what you're worth. And so to hear the level of which that was incongruous to how he was disrespected given how good he was, it really makes you think, dang, like it makes you sit in a different level of, and that was racism, that was classism. It was more than even just racism. It was a principle that we took on in the series, was that the folks who had power at this time really didn't respect the youth. They didn't respect you if you were other than part of that power network. And they really couldn't conceptualize that they would ever lose their power. They could not conceive it. The Denver owner said that because he thought, I could say this, I'll be fine. And what's the kid gonna do? He can't do anything. They have no rights. They have no power. And this was that first generation of guys who really were like, no, we're gonna do something about it. We're gonna fight. And that essence of that became a mantra for us in the filmmaking room, amongst the production crew. We kept saying, this is about the power of your soul versus the powers that be. This movie's about the power of your soul versus the powers that be. And I say that because Tim and David, at that time, we had no title. We didn't have a title for it. So they didn't have a title. That was our mantra in the filmmaking room. This movie's about the power of your soul, your individual expression versus the powers that be. And eventually that grew into being the title of the entire series.
Yeah. Before I ask the next question, I think why I found that part about Spencer Haywood so disturbing was because prior to that, you talk about how the ABA was different. There was sort of an unspoken cap of 2 African Americans on an NBA team. And the ABA teams were fully integrated. And a lot of the footage showed, black players and white players, hugging and, being together. And I'm trying to remember who it was. It might have been Willie Wise talking about how Louis Dampier was his, was like a brother to him. Yeah. So that's why I found that so jarring, that particular piece. And, obviously growing up being a Spencer Haywood fan, it hurt on that level too. But let me go back to it. You tell the story about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who at the time was still Lou Alcindor. He was supposed to sign with the ABA. Mm-hmm. And the commissioner at the time, George Mikan, who was an NBA legend himself, either he didn't deliver the check that was promised to Alcindor. Tell us what impact you think that might have had on the league and the future trajectory of the league if Alcindor had signed with the ABA as opposed to signing with the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah, it's one of those great, what if moments in sports history, Tim. I mean, because we all know what Lou Alcindor represented at that time period in the late 60s, early 70s, as far as just the pure athleticism, the genius of his moves, his skill level. To watch him, and one thing I love about this documentary is I never got to see these guys in their youthful prime. There's something about seeing a great basketball player at 19 years old, at 20 years old. Like Alcindor's leaping ability, his quickness, his speed, I never really had seen that. And now I get it. As soon as I saw it, I'm like, I get it. I see why he was so dominant at UCLA. I see why he was what he was. I think if he had come to the league, it would have totally shifted the power because he was so much further ahead than the other people playing basketball at that time. He was so much better that I think it would have shifted the power to the ABA and would have totally changed the trajectory of how that merger happened, how the leagues came together. It could have ended up being more like an AFL, NFL thing where all the teams, come together. We're on one side and you're on the other. And now we have 2 conferences. It's one of the most fun things to think about. And it's interesting. At the premiere that we had for this series in New York on February 10th, I found out a new piece of information about that interaction because there's so many ABA guys who are still here with us, thank God. And one of them, Pink Gardner from the Kentucky franchise Colonels, he was like, I know someone who was involved in those meetings. And the word is that in the end, Mikan told him before when he had the check and he was supposed to give to Lou Alcindor, there's a $1 million cashier's check. That's the difference maker. That's going to make him come to the ABA. And he said in the end, Mikan just said, you know what? I thought about it. Our offer is good enough as is. Our yearly offer, we just don't need it. It's like, we're wasting this money, guys. We just don't need it. That was his decision he made. So that's just from another third-party source. There's so many folks who have inside information on this, but I thought it was amazing that one person's decision to keep a check in their pocket changed the trajectory of basketball history.
Yeah, and you make a point to tell the audience that he wasn't the ABA commissioner for much longer after that decision.
Yeah. Well, that was definitely an interesting part. I grew up as a huge UCLA basketball fan, so it was a little after Alcindor had moved on. Tim and I are both old enough to remember just how dominant and amazing and game-changing he was when he came to the Bucks. Now, my first job after I came out of the ACC was to go to DePaul as the assistant SID, where George Mikan is an absolute legend there. So it was really interesting seeing all these things come together. But now I'm going to go to the next question, which is even more tied to me, because that's what we like to do on the show, Kenan, is make it about us. Dr. J is my favorite athlete of all time. On every level or any reason why you'd say who is your favorite player. And the fact that he ended up coming to the NBA and ended up with the Sixers, which I was a fan at the time growing up, and he brought that championship to that team. For those that haven't seen the documentary yet or weren't aware of this, talk to us about, I guess, Doc's influence on the game, but really how seminal that moment of the slam dunk contest was when he did the from the free throw line dunk, which was, I mean, that was like Space Jam stuff then, right?
Yeah.
So talk about what that meant for the ABA.
Yeah, I just love the players recounting of that, because it's interesting. It was the Denver Nuggets team against the All-Star team. The money in the league had come to a point where it was such the finance had become such a strain that the Nuggets played against the All-Stars. So all the Denver Nuggets were there. So we talked to a number of them, from Chuck Williams to so many different guys, Ralph Simpson. And Ralph Simpson said at that moment, they remember, because before he does the dunk, you see him walk to the free throw line and start walking backwards with big, long strides. And they said that moment that Ralph Simpson turned to Chuck Williams like, he's about to go from the free throw line. That's what there's like, no way. There's no way. Just that it's similar to what I was saying about seeing these guys in their prime. I love Dr. J, but I didn't understand Dr. J till doing this series. Because when I saw young Dr. J and the span of the hands, the magician type manipulation around the backboard, what he could do off the backboard, the unstoppable nature of his game, and to see him in his youth, it's mind blowing. It's like, really, like we spent days in production where we were supposed to be editing Act 3 of Episode 3, and we're just like, have you look at this, click on this, watch this game, because we had full games at times of him. Yeah, even before he was with the Nets, we had full games of him in Virginia when he's 21 years old. And I'm like, you got to click on this. Go to 1852 on the timeline. Look at this clip, and we'd be sitting there watching this, amazed. So just I haven't really seen anybody else be such a poet in the way he played at that time.
He's almost regal in his bearing.
Yeah.
And the charisma that he has. It's one of those things where there was 10 guys walking around this earth without any cool, because Dr. J had it for all of them.
Right. He got back in line 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Right.
Yeah. And he still is, when you're with him now, he still has, like you said, Tim, a very regal air to him. There's almost like it's almost like a somber nature to him, where in interviewing him too, one thing I got to see was like, he talked about being a kid growing up in Hempstead, Long Island, and he talked about just his childhood and things that he experienced. And you can tell it's hard to be that famous, that cool, and be that regular when you start talking. When you actually listen to him, he's very normal. He's like a very normal person who is very affected by things. And so that was the coolest thing to get to see about him. That's why I think he's so magnetic.
I grew up in a very mixed community right next door to Dr. J's hometown. So to me, he wasn't a black hero. He was a hero who happened to be black, right? So we, and I will say this, he was my second favorite net. You talk about John Williamson during that final ABA game. Super John was my guy. That was the guy I tried to emulate, because I was never going to dunk a basketball. Let's put it that way. That was probably why I chose him over Dr. J. But yeah, I mean, but we looked up to Dr. J because he was a guy from where we grew up.
And Super John, I'm glad you said that name. There's so many players like Super John Williamson who. And I consider myself to be really well informed when it comes to sports history. I was always that nerdy kid who had all the sports calendars and sports almanacs and would just sit there on Saturdays and read through them and read all the stats. And I thought that was fun. I never heard of a lot of these guys. I never heard of Super John Williamson. I didn't know what he did in that final decisive game of the ABA, and how he had really, been unstoppable in that final game. Doc gets a lot of credit, but he'll be the first to tell you it was Super John Williamson who was the driving scoring force.
I was telling David, before you came on, I did some work with Bobby Jones, who you feature in Episode 4. And this was probably 20 years after that game. And Bobby was still visibly like sort of angry. You know, we were up by 24. We had those guys, you know, and it was one of those things that it was going to stay with him forever.
I love that because you can see the passion in Bobby Jones when he talks about that. And those guys all said, Dan Issel's a great example, that the feelings we have for those games and those teammates, we didn't feel that way about our time in the NBA. We played in the NBA for years and years, but it was never that same type of like this magnetic attraction to the importance of the games, the importance of one another as teammates and brothers. There's something about the ABA that was special to even guys like Doc and guys like Gervin and Gilmore who had great NBA careers. But there's something about that ABA time.
There was a couple times during the show you brought in the Indiana Pacers team into a room and they looked at photographs and they sat down and talked about their experience. And you could sort of feel that camaraderie 50 years on between these guys.
Yeah, that was one of those moments that's a risk as a filmmaker. I had that idea, something I've never done before in my career. We called it experiential interviews. So instead of just sitting someone down and asking them questions and letting them kind of go back, we made a point of, we had 10,000 never before seen photos. We found a great collector of ABA photos, the biggest ABA photo collection of all time. We had great footage of never before seen footage. And I had mulled with this idea and wrestled, could we create a different interview experience? Where we place people back inside of the time capsule, almost put them back in time. So when you see the Indiana Pacers and they walk into that, it's a beautiful cigar bar in downtown Indianapolis, and they're together, and we open the doors for them. There's a huge part of this bar. We had thousands of photos hanging from the ceiling, hanging down, where they had to walk through. It's like walking through a mural, and they had to walk through the mural. And we really debated about that. I actually called one of my filmmaking partners named Ben Tischler, and we were on the verge of shooting the first day, and I was thinking of scrapping that idea. I hadn't really seen it but done before, and I didn't know if we could pull it off. And I told him about it. He was like, "You got to do it. You got to take the risk. You have to take the risk and try something new." And it turned out to be the defining emotional characteristic of the series, because when Rick Barry walks through with his Rick Barry attitude, and he walks through those pictures, and he's like, yeah, that's a good one. Oh, that's a great one to be shooting. Nah, I don't like that one. Nah, that's crap right there. He's like, oh, but this one's a good one. Like, he's just being Rick Barry. You see right away the personalities start to come in. You see them. Like Spencer Haywood sitting there. We had film for Spencer Haywood to watch himself. When he's watching himself play, that's one of my favorite moments of the series. When he's watching himself like a fan, he's like, yeah, go, boy. That's how you do it. They can't stop that. Like, he's watching himself, cheering himself on. That just brings out so much emotion. And Dr. J, of course, is the defining image, the beginning, the very first image. And I learned this partly from Steve Sable at NFL Films and partly from the 30 team, but make a full circle in your movies and your series. So you'll notice the very first image of the movie, of the series, is the very last image also. So placing Dr. J in front of that mural of his life, all types of image, and of the times of the 70s, like the Jeffersons are on there also, and like all of his images, like to put him back in that time, I could see him, you could see a different experience with him when he got to step into the experiential interviews.
Wow. I want to talk a little bit about the piece you did on Ellie Brown, wife of John Y. Brown. But after the story, I would prefer to say John Y. Brown was the husband of Ellie Brown.
I love it.
Because she did something that was truly groundbreaking in a groundbreaking league. So tell us why you chose to focus on her and her story building a championship team in Kentucky.
Yeah, I thought it was parallel. It was a parallel to the times. You know, that's one thing that 30 for 30, if you watch the movies that they've done, that they really hammer into you. That team of Connor Snell and John Dahl, Libby Geist there at ESPN, who I all got to work with this team and grow further in my career under them. And the folks who originated that series, including Keith Clean-Scales, like that team found something that changed sports documentaries forever. They were able to tap into the cultural connection between sports and our society, and finding that connection is the magic. That's the magic that makes people feel the movie deeply, because we all love sports. All of us who come to, we love sports when we come to these things. But when you say, oh yeah, I remember America was like that at that time, now you're talking about community, and sports is just the vehicle that's driving you through the community. And so when you look at that time period, this is, by the time she comes in the story, it's like the early 70s, 1972, 73, 74, in that range. The women's liberation movement is really kicking into full stride, and that's happening in America. But Could it be happening in sports at all? Well, as far as I had known, I had no prior knowledge of that having any effect in sports really, besides Billie Jean King in that famous tennis match. And so when I saw her story, I was like, this is too good. Like, this is too good. The more we asked, the more we found out about it, and the more we asked about the effect that they had. Like, what was their effectiveness of Ellie Brown taking over a team, being given management control, and then hiring a board of directors of all women, 10 other women, to take over a basketball team, a sports team. What effect did they have? That's what I wanted to know. Like, it's nice. The story's nice in general. If that happened, that's cute. But what effect did they have? And when you find out that they were able to unlock the missing ingredient to winning a championship on one of the best franchises in the ABA history, the Kentucky Colonels, who had never won a championship, and you hear the players talk about, like, they unlocked for us the exact thing we needed. The only thing we were missing was a full Coliseum. We had the coach, we had the players, we had the scheme. We just needed the fans in our home games to be packed and full, and that would send us over the top, and she was able to do that. I think that story just makes her a unknown sports legend.
The fact that she's featured in it, that moment when she comes in the room, and she's interviewed her quite a bit with her son, that was incredibly emotional, I thought. And I'm so happy that she's able to experience that because of the effort that you and your team have made to produce this. So I hope she appreciates that as well, because I just thought that was an amazing moment in the film.
Yeah, you could tell she did, and she was just such a, it's like a Southern belle, just such a lady of the South, and she had such a, you talk about like a decorum about her and such a ambiance about her, because she carried that kind of that dignity of what she'd accomplished, and we felt the urgency that we needed to capture her and others like her at that time. And she's one of the many participants in this documentary who've passed away since we finished filming. And so to have captured her story at that moment, and she's still so bright and sharp and alert and so feisty still, that we were able to capture it. And that's one of those things I just get thankful for as a storyteller, because I think at times, you guys understand this, that at times you feel a burden as a storyteller to, this may be the only time this person's story gets told in this type of full nature. And I felt that with her. And so to be able to capture her story before having her no longer be with us was really one of the things just gives me the most contentment and satisfaction about this series.
Well, there were a number of points in the series that I think hit this, but it was one very, I think, profound one that just showed how much these people that were involved, and a lot of the people that were involved in it, just loved what it was, and she loved that team. I felt like she really loved that team. I'm a big fan of sports broadcasting. We talk about that on this show quite a bit. As someone that follows broadcasting, I certainly knew that Costas had deep St. Louis ties. I didn't know that he really got this big break working for the Spirits of St. Louis as the ABA announcer. He was maybe 20 or so, 20. Yeah, he's super young. How much can you attribute what Bob Costas became to his experience working in the ABA? Clearly, it was a very important part of his training.
Yeah, I love that question, David, because we talked about that, and we talked about that with him. Because I was challenging he and George Carl and Dr. J about this. There's something that's been left over with the guys who are part of the ABA. There's something about the way they talk, the way they act. There's a little rebel nature, even in Bob Costas, who seems on the surface the less rebellious character you could think of, right? When you think of Bob Costas, but there's something about him when you talk to him personally where there's something that's stuck. There's a freelance nature, a spontaneous nature to these guys that's a little different than other athletes I've worked with. And I asked Bob about that, and he was like, there was so little, like there was so little reins. There were so little strings upon you when you were in part of the ABA. There was so much freedom to succeed and to fail, to make mistakes. And you'll see, for those who haven't seen the series yet, episode 4, where he has an epic fail on the mic in the middle of one of the games. And we were talking to him in New York at the premiere. He's like, you put that in there? That's in there? I was like, yeah, we put it in the series. He's like, there's so much room for you to express yourself and be yourself that I think that definitely helped form him in his unique, one-of-a-kind voice, his unique, one-of-a-kind perspective, his willingness to say what he really thinks about athletic performances and about athletic events. And so I think it was critical in shaping him. And I love for younger viewers, and we had a number of young people on the staff of this film, I love for viewers to be able to see Bob Costas at 22. before he's a legend, before it's guaranteed and it's written in the stars, he's going to be this great thing. I love seeing these icons at the most unsure moment of their lives.
He clearly, even at that young age, had a gift. I mean, he is a gifted broadcaster. There's no other way to say that.
Yeah. Towards the end of the series, Dan Issel says, when watching some footage of NBA players, he said, it's like we used to play in the ABA. And there was comparisons made a couple times throughout the series about how the style of play in the NBA is very similar to the ABA. What would you say is the lasting legacy of the American Basketball Association?
I'd say the legacy, first of all, is that these guys changed the game. These guys changed the game. The game you watch now is the game that they created. The speed of the game, the fast-paced freelance nature of the game, of course, the three-point shot, of course, the high-flying athleticism that the slam dunk contest is emblematic of. They changed the game. But secondarily and more subtly, I think what you see is they changed the way players are viewed in sports in general. The idea of players having individuality, an individual type of stamp to themselves. I mean, Dr. J, like you said, I've talked to so many people from different states in the United States who've reached out to me, talked to me of all different races, ages. Like, that's my favorite guy of all time. Well, he was one of the first guys to stamp his personality on the way he played. As much as you love the Celtics team of the 60s and those guys who were great players, from Havlicek to Sam Jones to Russell, they played as a Celtic. They were part of the Celtic lore. If you look at them, they all look the same, dress the same. This league created an individuality that defines sports now. Sports now is built of individuals who are willing to express themselves and be themselves, and they may not even realize that grew out of this one sports league called the ABA.
There are so many things in this docuseries that we could go on about. I do want to switch subjects just for a second. As we mentioned in the introduction, NFL Films was part of your training ground, and Tim and I will tell you that was a weekly part of our lives growing up. Just what was created there and its legacy today. Talk to us a little about 𝗧𝘆𝗹𝗲𝗿.
Yeah, Steve was great. Steve was a former football player also, which I didn't know before I got to NFL Films. He played in Colorado as a fullback. He actually was a backup who took out a newspaper article about himself. He made his own nickname up, and he called himself, like, what was his nickname? It was like Mayday Sable or something like that. He had a whole, he didn't even play. But he had a whole, he took out a whole article in the Colorado paper about like people talking about him, but it's his article. He made it. So he was a consummate showman, the consummate artist too. People don't realize Steve would build art, football art that decorated the walls of NFL Films. On the inside of the walls was his art that he had made, like these handmade pieces that were incredibly detailed. Like, to be around him and to see, he told this, he would sell on Thursdays at NFL Films. You have screenings where the young people have to show their work, right? And you have to go up in front of all these old grizzled veterans and they tear your work apart, right? You have to go up in front of everybody, you stand there, and those meetings really help you it was like almost like it was like filmmaking boot camp. And I love that experience because he would always say, our job as storytellers is to deliver the moment. If it's time for the people to all laugh, and then they have to laugh. If you play that for an audience, they don't laugh, then we've lost. That's a game we lost. If there's a time for the audience to cry, and you put that on the screen and they don't cry, that we lost that moment. But if they do cry, that's a win. Your job is to deliver the moment. And so that when we're in the edit room, Steve's voice just sticks with me in that regard. And that's why, and I'm known to be very like, how would I say it nicely? Like, I keep pushing us in the edit room. I keep pushing. Like I said, the only standard is that. The only standard is, did we undeniably deliver the moment? That's the only standard. If we didn't, we're still working. We're not done yet. We're not done yet. And so that, I cherish that lesson from Steve. And he really gave me a chance. Like, he really saw me, and he saw that as a football player, I could write the game. I could write the game of football. And he gave me a great opportunity as a young producer to write some of the bigger shows at NFL Films. And those guys, Ray Didinger, and the guys who were older, accepted me and allowed me and helped me. And that really was a trampoline for my career, because it gave me confidence that if Steve believes in me, knowing what he knows, then I should probably believe in myself a bit and to go forward.
Well, we can't thank you enough for coming on the show, but before we let you go, we have two questions that we ask all our guests. The first one First one, I want you to sort of take us through how you actually got into the business, right? I mean, the experience at NFL Films seems unbelievable, if not a little bit harrowing for a young filmmaker. So how did you get your start? How did you land there coming out of school?
I had a show with three friends called Duke Sports Inferno at Duke, where we had a comedy / it was like Saturday Night Live with all sports. And that's where, and Duke came to recruit. And they were like, you're a football player who has a TV show, who does movies? Like, yes, you should definitely come. But before that, my dad's video camera belonged to my father only on vacation. When we weren't on vacation, it was mine. And I would take it with my little brother. We would go around. I'm from Texas, from Houston to Woodlands, Texas. And we would go around the Woodlands making movies. So instead of doing papers in high school, my teachers knew they would allow me to make movies. So I wouldn't do papers. I would make movies in the stead. And so my classmates were like, yeah, when are you making the next movie? And they made all kinds of funny movies during high school. And so it's just something that filmmaking is something I never really thought about. We just did it because it was fun. We did it because it was fun. And we did it in college because it was fun. And in NFL Films, it was fun. And so it's always been just like an extension of one of the ways that I kind of like express myself as a person. I never thought of it as a business or a job. And I still don't really think about it like that. It's just kind of like, this will be fun. If we can make this amazing section about George Gervin that makes people see how awesome he is, wouldn't that be fun? And I still think of it like that.
Okay. And the last question, what one piece of advice would you have for somebody looking to break into your industry?
Ooh, that's good. Well, I tell all my athletes, artists, mentees, a lot of them are searching for a way to get in. I tell them the two basic things that you got to understand. It's like you got to think like, if you think of like an athlete, like your foundation, your legs, your foundation is the idea that self-care is career care. Self-care in this business is career care. Your soul has to be intact and in good spirits to create something that's soulful, that people can feel. That's the first thing I tell them. And then the last thing I tell them, the hands of your career, your hands that are going to help you reach out to people is harmonious business relationships. That's one of the biggest things in entertainment, is maintaining harmonious business relationships. It's one of the toughest things to do, because to do what we do, as you guys know, you got to bring your heart to work. You have to bring your heart to work. It's not like doing spreadsheets. Like, you got to bring your heart into it. If you don't have your heart in it, you can't make anything great. And when your heart's in it, people are sensitive. And when people are sensitive, people get offended. So I tell them the mastery of the art of keeping harmonious business relationships in this industry is essential. It'll define your ceiling. It'll define how high you go.
Thank you for that. Kenan Kamwana Holley, thank you for joining us. Fascinating discussion. Kenan is the director and an executive producer of the Prime Video docuseries, 4-part docuseries, Soul Power, the Legend of the American Basketball Association. And I found it fascinating, and I found this discussion fascinating. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, David and Tim, thank you for having me, man. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Discussion there with Kenan. I tell you, we might have to open up one of those offshoot ideas that we talk about from time to time. Wait, what? Sports documentary chat with DP and McGee. Super great discussion, and glad we had him on here. But we have arrived at that point of the show where we reserve for shout outs and things we are looking at or forward to. So Tim, what do you have your eye on?
Well, a couple things. One, I want to see if Tyler Reddick can make it 4 in a row. I have to imagine that there's probably been a bump in NASCAR viewership, which is great for this season. But this Friday, our president is going to be chairing what is called a college roundtable to solve the problems of college athletics. And he's got a number of different people on this committee, and I'm very interested to see what comes out of it. Let's just say I'm not overly optimistic that they're going to be particularly effective in affecting change within college athletics. What about you?
Well, one quick shout out. I want to thank Ray Stallone, who was instrumental in helping us schedule Kenan for this show. Ray and I go back a long time. He was the guy that officially hired me at DePaul University when he was the SID, and I got hired as the assistant SID, and that's the move that brought me to Chicago a long time ago. So big thanks to him. Agree. I think this story with the saving of college sports will be an interesting one to watch. One other legal case, and because we talk about that stuff a lot, that just came up, is the Live Nation and Ticketmaster antitrust suit. Live Nation, of course, owns Ticketmaster, and there are some people that feel that that is too much power to be placed. And so not only we're talking about entertainment events, which most people equate with Live Nation, but because Ticketmaster's strength across all of sports and what that does for pricing, these things do need to be looked at from time to time. So that will be an interesting legal case to follow over the next few weeks. I don't know how long that particular court case is scheduled to or expected to last, because you never really know, but we will see how it moves through. So I think we are wrapping this episode 149. Once again, Kenan Kamwana Holley, a director and an executive producer on 𝗨𝗨𝗶𝗆, Legend of the American Basketball Association, available on Prime. It's a 4-part series. Watch it. If you like hoops in any way, including current NBA or college ball, or just have a great respect for the game, watch it. I think you will be impressed. He did a great job pulling that together. So that's it. Tim, thank you for the always great discussion. Mostly, thank you to the listeners. We appreciate you spending a little time with us. Be sure to hit that follow, hit those likes and subscribe buttons. Anytime they pop up, it helps with everything we do here. And of course, be sure to check us out at dpandmcgee.com. That's where you can find all the links to various other content. So with that, until next time, I'm DP, he's McGee, and we'll talk soon.